This is Akash Chauhan, and in today's lecture, we will focus on what are the differences between Scala and Java, uh, what is parallel processing, what is mutable state. So it is in the continuation of previous lecture. Uh, Before moving ahead, I think some of the student have faced issues with the why Scala is bounded type. So I actually plan to explore this topic later on, but I think some of you want to understand this now. So let me explain the bounded type and what is upper bound and what is lower bound. Then I'll move to these topics: Scala versus Java, parallel processing, and mutable states. So without any further ado, let's understand what is upper bound and what is lower bound. So as you can see in this, t less than colon uh, s. Okay, so this symbol between t and s is called upper bound, but we need to understand what is the meaning of upper bound, right? So here T is actually the type parameter and S is actually the type. As you can see over here, T is the type parameter and S is the type. So if we write int a equal to 5, so T would become that variable and S would become the type of that variable. Okay. So if it is less than and colon S, it means T, which is the variable, T can be T can be S in case of upper bound. Okay, T can be S or the subparts. Okay, the subtype of S. Okay, as you can see, I have written over here as well. Uh, Type parameter must be, type parameter means T. Okay, T type parameter must be either same as S. It can be S or subtype of S. So theoretical, this is the theoretical definition. But if we want to understand, how this is related to the real life examples, okay. So in a Scala, okay, if we have this abstract class which has the declared a string which is called name. Okay, this is actually the abstract class. It means we can this is actually the way of declaring something. Okay, but we can decide the value of name later on. Okay, whichever class would extend this class, the value, particular value, can be defined for that particular string. Here the name is used as a string. Would like to tell you that our focus should be on this symbol, right? This particular symbol. But for to understand this symbol, we need to understand the inheritance. Okay. So as you can see over here in this class cat is actually extending pet class. And what is pet class? Pet class is also another abstract class which is actually extending animal class. So this is animal class and pet class is actually extending this animal class. Okay. But this cat class is extending directly to pet, not the animal. And dog is also extending pet because dog is also a pet, but lion is not a pet. That's why lion is extending directly the animal class, not this pet class, because this pet class is actually a specific class which would be containing all the pets information, right? It means here pet class, this pet class is, if we consider pet as S, then what can be T? Okay, what can be T in that? Cat is extending pet. That is what we have written over here. As you can see, I'll show you. Type parameter must be or either same as S, it can be S or subtype of S. So if we are passing, if we are talking about cat, okay, it is extending pet. Okay, so I'll talk about this later on, but you need to understand this actually cat and dog are extending pet class over here, but lion class is actually the animal class. It is not it it has nothing to do with pet class. So here we need to focus on this part. This is actually as a parameter what we are doing. Pet container is another class, but in that we are passing some parameters. Okay, here as you can see we have written a type. Okay, which type is a class type. Okay, and we are passing t, and t is what? This t is the type parameter we are passing. Okay, during the definition of this class we have already mentioned that it is a pet and it is the upper bound of pet. So whatever the type parameter this class would expect, it would always be the upper bound of pet. It means either you send pet or the subclasses of pet. Subclasses or subtype of S means either you send cat or dog or you directly send pet. Some instance of pet or the instances of each subtypes. Okay, this subtype is there. Okay, so as you can see here, this is possible if you can understand. Pet container we are passing dog. Dog, if t is dog, then as you can see dog is extending pet, and our definition is saying either it's the type parameter t would be same as s or the subtype of s. So as you can see dog is the subtype of pet. So this statement would execute fine, would be executed fine, and there would be no issue. Let's talk about cat. Cat would also do the same. But when it comes to lion, as you can see, lion is not extending pet, and it is saying either it would be S or subtype of S. So lion has no connection with the pet, so this would not be there. So it means whenever you see this symbol less than colon S, it means this T type could be S or the subtype of S. This is called the upper bound. Let's talk about the lower bound. As you can see, this is upper bound. For this, we have used this less than symbol. For lower bound, we will see it is, we will have to use this greater than symbol colon. In this case, this is again the type parameter and this is the type. So this type parameter t must be either same or as s. So it can be s or super type of s. Super type of s means let's say b is extending a. Okay, so in that case either it could be b or it could be a, because we can pass the super class as well. So again, as you can see in the same class, animal class is there, pet class is there, cat dog class is there, we have this container. Okay, so let's see if we can, which statement would be executed in case of this greater than symbol. Earlier it was less than symbol. Okay, this as you can see over here. So in that case, if it is a dog, it means the t, this t parameter can be dog or the superclass of dog. So what we can pass, either we can pass dog or we can pass pet. Okay, so we can pass pet, right? So whatever the implementation class of pet is there, okay, we can pass that. So what we are doing over here is actually this. Okay, so this dog would be executed fine. Okay, no issue. Okay, this cat will not be executed. Why? We'll talk about this pet. Okay, this cat is actually, if you can see, cat is extending pet. Okay, so either we can use the same class dog because it is a dog, or the super class. So pet is the super class of dog. We can pass pet as we have passed over here, but we cannot pass cat. Okay, because cat is not the super class of that. So as you can see over here, it is, although this is abstract class, we are not supposed to create the object like we have created over here, but just to show you as an example that you can pass the, if it is not there, let's say, then this is fine. So it means you can pass either that class, that particular class object, or the super class. Super class is which is actually extended. Okay, this is the class. You might be extending some of the methods of that superclass, and you can pass the superclass itself. That's why it is saying the type parameter t must be either same as s or super type of s. So guys, this is all about the bounded type. In Scala, we can use this upper bound, this notation, this less than colon, and this greater than colon. This is provided by the Scala, okay? And it would give you more restrictions over what can you pass in a class as a function or as a parameter, okay? So I hope your doubt is clear now. Still, if you have a doubt, you can comment down below to this video session. Okay, now let's talk about the Scala versus Java. So one thing to notice over here is uh, we have already seen in the previous lecture that whenever the JVM would come into the picture, JVM would expect the bytecode from the compiler. Okay, so whether it is written in Scala or Java, till it is produced, uh, till the compiler would produce bytecode, JVM wouldn't mind. Okay, it means JVM is independent from Scala or Java because it would execute bytecode. Okay, it means somehow there would be some similarity between Scala and Java. So you must understand those similarities and what are the other differences we will see. Okay, so as I already told you that if you are aware about the Java, it is super easy for you to learn Scala because some the syntax is almost similar to Java. Okay, you would be able to understand that C++, if you have the good knowledge of C++ and Java, it would be very easy for you guys to learn Scala. Then one of the this point is very important, that one of the biggest syntactic difference between Scala and Java is you are not required to use this semicolon. This is always optional in Scala. In a Scala program, we have already seen that you know sorry, uh, it is a collection of objects that communicate by invoking each other methods. So this is more similar to Java as well. Java also work on the same pattern. These things we have already discussed in brief, okay, but in detail we will discuss in passing lectures and future lectures. Let's look at the differences between Scala and Java based on some parameters. So in terms of compactness, uh, Scala is more compact and concise, whereas the Java is comparatively larger chunk of code. Whenever you would work on Java, Java is little explainable kind of language, but when it comes to Scala, it is more concise and compact. When it comes to OOPS and functional programming, basically you can I have already discussed this with you. This is Scala is actually designed for both object and functional programming language, and it supports a wide variety of functional programming features such as the concurrency and immutability. So if any language would provide you the functional programming features like concurrency and immutability, which is actually required to have application accessed by multiple users at the same time. So if you have written some logic in Java or Scala, multiple users like thousands of or millions of users would be able to execute the same functionality at the same time. So for that we need concurrency and immutability of the object. Okay, we have already discussed this in previous lecture. Originally the Java was developed only for object-oriented language, but as I told you that new libraries and concurrency features, synchronization features and libraries has been incorporated in Java as well, like in 2 3 years, past 2 3 years. So it is also it would also provide you the strong fundamental what to say the functional programming fundamentals in Java as well. So with those libraries where you can synchronize your code, where you can create multiple threads with those libraries, and concurrency, thread safety would always be there. So in that terms, Java is also cooperating with the functional programming aspects as well. Lazy evaluation. Okay, so lazy evaluation, I have also written the definition over here. You can check over here as well. So the lazy evaluation is something call by need as well. So code would be there, it would also be in the RAM, but it will not be executed until unless it will be called. Okay, so the evaluation strategy is different. The lazy evaluation or call by end is actually the evaluation strategy where an expression is not evaluated until it is first used. So whenever the first use would come into the picture of an expression, until it will not be evaluated in advance. Okay, so this is actually the lazy evaluation, and Scala support the lazy evaluation, but Java wouldn't support the lazy evaluation. If there is expression, the functionality, the JVM, the execution in Java is such that all the expression would be pre-calculated in advance. Whenever there is a functionality in invocation will be there. Operator overloading is there. Has, the Scala support operator overloading, but the Java wouldn't support that. Okay, we will look into this aspect during the assignment. Okay, whenever we will discuss some code related to the operators, we will look into the what is actually the operator overloading. Compilation process in Scala it is slow, in Java it is faster. Okay, types of variable: Scala variable by default immutable type. Okay, and by default in Java it is mutable. Immutable and mutable, what is the difference between immutable and mutable, we will see later on. Okay, the main difference I'll explain in this lecture only. Okay, because it is very important. Mutable type we need to understand. Okay, let's look at the parallel processing. Okay, and then we will move to the mutable state, in which we will also cover these mutable type or immutable type. Let's talk about the parallel processing. Okay, let me show you. You can see all these statements very clearly. So parallel computing is a type of computation where different computations can be performed at the same time. So as nowadays, if you are aware that all the computers, all the systems would come with many core. Okay, the CPU would come with many core CPUs. Okay, let's say it is a 4-core CPU, it is 2-core CPU. So the number of cores you have, it means the number of parallel computations you can have. Okay, so let's say for the large problem where you have the large problem, really large problem, and if you are handling the large problem or one computation at a time by one CPU, or more precisely by one core of a CPU, it would take enormous amount of time. So to make program very efficient, we use distributed system. Either we use distributed system, or we want to make our system multi-core. Okay, so whenever you have that multi-core system, you have different cores. So all those core or CPU units within the CPU would can execute your program parallelly. The computation can take place, the different computation can take place in each of your core of your CPU. So when the problem can be divided into sub problems, for each problem simultaneously the core of the CPU can execute those statements parallelly. Okay, so as you can see, these statements are sequentially in this unit. And but uh, if we compare these statements and these statements, they are parallelly executing, they are sequentially. So might be the this is the efficiency of your system, that if the sequential statement can be grouped into one, and they would be executed by one processor, and independent statement to those statements can be executed parallelly by different processors. So the more processors you have, the more independent statements you can execute parallelly. So this is called the parallel processing, but in that you should have the multi-core functionality. I have already discussed this need of parallel processing. Okay, you can go through this by yourself, but if still if you want me to give the brief, These days the data is growing very progressively. It means the data is increasing day by day exponentially, and if you have large data, it means you need a large memory to handle that data, and more complex computation with that data would be there. To handle it, we don't need a single core CPU. We need a more robust CPU, which would have multiple cores. Okay, with multiple cores, and the parallel processing is possible. Okay, which would actually reduce the computation time. Okay, eventually, even let's say this iPhone has 4S, and iPhone 4S has 2 cores. Okay, these days everything is coming in core. Okay, so this is about the parallel processing, but how to achieve it in Scala? The future APIs are there, which would provide you to execute things in parallel. Okay, so uh, in Scala, it is very easy to use future APIs, where you can achieve this parallel processing if you put some what to say in future. If you add some new task and some variables, some new things in future, they all can execute in parallel, because future API is actually designed to execute things in parallel. Okay, this would also help you to use other techniques than threads, locks, and callback. I'll discuss this future API in detail in future as well. So you just need to be aware that future API would help you to execute things in parallel with multi-core of the processor. Okay, so Scala would provide you that also. What is mutable state? This is the last topic of this lecture. We have done with Scala versus Java, parallel processing, and third one is the mutable state. So mutable, as I was talking to you, that we will also discuss the immutable type and mutable type. This is the time. Mutable means something which can be changed if you want to. So mutable means change with time or can change. Okay, but immutable, when it comes to immutable variable, it means you are not supposed to change or reassign the value. You cannot reassign any value. Okay, so when it is immunity kind of, immutable means you are not supposed to change. When it is mutable means you can change it. Okay, but what is the use of immutable or mutable variables? First, you need to understand that Scala provide all the variables. Whenever you use by default variables, they are all immutable. Immutable means once you assign some value, it is intact. It will not be changed. Okay, throughout the program, you have to create new variables and new objects to store the new state of a class. But for the same object, same variable, the variable value would be intact. Okay, so if let's say a is equal to 10, okay, and 10,000 threads would be executing this, accessing this value. But if it is immutable, immutable means you are not supposed to change it. It means for all those 1000 threads and customers, a would always be 10. But let's say one thread would change it to 12. It means it will also reflect the other thread also. So it would be great if it can be intact value. So Scala would provide you this functionality to make immutable and mutable collections. Okay, I'll talk about these collections later on. Let's say if you are using this Scala collection, immutable collection, we have two types of collection: mutable and immutable. So if you are creating this, it means you, once you have created it, this array or this square would always have cat and dog. You are not supposed to change this collection. But in case of this mutable collection, whenever you are accessing this, you can change it in over the period of time as well. So Scala would provide you both the functionality according to the need of your application. You can use the immutable and mutable collections inside the Scala. We will discuss these things in detail. Okay, we will implement some of the examples of these packages. Okay, this package is scala.collection.immutable and scala.collection.mutable. We will explore different classes inside these packages. Okay, but you just need to have the idea of mutable state and immutable state of a variable and object, and the functionalities provided by Scala to achieve mutable and immutable state is by using a particular collection inside a particular package. We will see in detail later on, but if you have immutable variables, it will help you to create more robust and thread safe application. We will see in detail with progressive lectures and in future lectures. Okay, so this is all for today. If you have any doubt in this lecture, you can comment down below. And thank you so much and have a good day.